Hello and welcome to this video. My name's Barry Beckham. As you can see, the subject here is Pictures to Xe slideshow software and the smoothing line. What actually is the smoothing line and how may we apply it? The thickness of the smoothing line is a variable parameter available with some of the transitions we see in Pictures to Xe. They are the hour hand, the shapes, gates and page transitions. Now the smoothing line has been an option within Pictures to Xe for as long as I can recall, but I rarely hear any mention of it or see much evidence that the smoothing line is used very much. Now I have used this option quite a bit myself over the years, so perhaps a short demonstration of the smoothing line and what it can do may be helpful. Now we can apply the smoothing line globally via Project Options and the Transitions tab, or to individual slides, which is probably the better option of the two. Let's go down to the Project Options at the extreme bottom left, click to bring it on screen, and the tab that we want is the Transitions tab about halfway down. The thickness of the smoothing line is available on the hour hand transition, the shapes, the gates and the page. Just to show you what I want to show you here, I'll select gates. There we can see the thickness of the smoothing line. You'll see that the default setting is around 35. So if I selected the gates transition and whether I stayed with the smoothing line as it is or I increased it or decreased it, when I click OK, of course that transition and its settings is going to be set for all of the slides in my sequence. Another way to set the smoothing line is if we've got a sequence perhaps of basic dissolve. Let's remove the gates there. So let's say we're setting up a slideshow with a basic dissolve transition, but on one or two of the particular slides in that sequence we want to apply the thickness of the smoothing line to a different transition style. Well, then we can just select one of those images and we can do so via slide options down at the bottom left, and if we go to the transitions, of course we can select the same hour hand, shapes, gates or page and apply the transition with the smoothing line to just one image in our show. Now one of the ways to get an idea of what the smoothing line does is to select it via slide options. Let me demonstrate what I mean. Let's assume we're making a slideshow here and we want this image followed by this one. I'm going to select this one to make a change. If we go to the slide options, which I demonstrated just a few moments ago, and if I go down to, let's say, the shape options, we can see in the thumbnail above exactly what this transition is doing. We've got a circle, slightly soft. Well, the softness is being created by the smoothing line. Let me drop that smoothing line down to almost zero, and now look at what we're seeing. So you can see exactly what this transition is doing. We get the option, of course, to go to the center or from the center. We also have the opportunity to change the shapes, but I must admit over the years I've used this one quite a bit, but I've only ever found a good need for the circle. I think what may also help us here is if I just increase this to 4 seconds so we can see it working a little bit slower. So the thickness of the smoothing line is a controllable option, and we know that the default is 35, so if I push this back to somewhere around there, now we can see that is quite soft, but of course we've got quite a change we can make here. So we're almost getting the same effect as we would have with a standard dissolve transition, but we're able to give it a degree of softness that we feel is right for the images we're presenting. And it can be changed at any time, of course, and it looks pretty neat when you see this full screen. Now, at a risk of drifting just a little bit away from the subject, which is the thickness of the smoothing line, because I've opened up the shapes transition, let me just show you how we can adjust where that shape appears from. Let's say we wanted it to come up from the center. Well, we're going to move the center point. To be able to see that clearly, I'm going to drop that smoothing line off for a moment. What I'm going to do here is just scroll down a little bit, because there's a little hidden option down here. Here we can change the position of that circle. So if I move to the right of 50 and we watch the thumbnail above, you can see exactly what's happening. I'm going to position this just about over where the sunset is just going down. So I think I need a little more than that. Let's try about 72. That looks okay, but it's still a little high. I need to drop the circle down. For that, I can use the option on the right here. Move it a little bit to the right, and there you can see it coming up maybe a little bit too high. One more look. Yes, we can come down a little more. Let's try 70 there. I think that's going to be close enough. So now you can see we could push the thickness of the smoothing line maybe up to around 50 or 60. 73 I've just picked at random, and now we've determined exactly where the color from the second image in this sequence is going to come from. And that looks pretty good when we see it full screen. So at this point, let's take a break and take a look at a full screen preview. There's the image we looked at earlier, and the sunset is going to appear down at the bottom right corner, and that lovely soft sweep from the bottom right outwards. A normal straight dissolve for the next image, but then the gates starting from the center and moving out with the smoothing line around about 50 or 60, and the next one the opposite way round from the outside inwards. If you go to my website, take a look at page 5 of my Pictures to Exie slideshows at Triptography. It's a slideshow that uses the smoothing line. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put a couple of links below. Thanks for watching.